All right, how's it going, party people? I wanted to make a quick video just to talk about geopolitics and what's going on with Venezuela, or what has happened with Venezuela, and the issues around the Trump administration. Um, More or less, just dictating what happens in Latin America. Here we had the Trump administration has just beat down the door and went in and got Maduro, right? Now, the fun thing about this, well, there's a lot of fun things about this. One important thing to note is that the Venezuela's administration, the Maduro's administration, was quite friendly with the Chinese and Russians. So geopolitically, America doesn't like that, and so this is in the grand chessboard a move to sort of deprive the Chinese and Russians, and to some extent even North Korea and Iran, um, of one more friend, right? And then, in light of the Monroe Doctrine, this is kind of par for the course for what America does, historically, at least for the past century or more. Um, is it strictly speaking a good thing, a bad thing? Nobody's really going to lament the loss of Maduro. He is a dictator, and even if he wasn't, he has wrecked Venezuela, right? So, um, in that sense, was his election legitimate? I don't really know. It seems like everybody says that he's illegitimate and a dictator. It's probably the case. Um, so, is it good to get rid of him? Geopolitically, it is a good move for the United States. All morality aside, he's a problem, and if you're in the Western Hemisphere, it is a very rare times where the U.S. is willing to tolerate you as a problem. And really, Venezuela's problem isn't just that it has put itself, in an anti-American alignment. It's that it has a lot of oil, right? And controlling who gets that oil is of interest for the Americans. If Venezuela exported, broccoli and oranges, nobody would care who's running Venezuela into the ground. Um, but it does send a message that the Chinese and the Russians can't protect you. It sends the message that this hemisphere is going to be an American playground, right, as it has been forever. But this is America's backyard, like it or not. Uh, does this make World War III more likely? Honestly, probably not. The argument is that this, what is happening here is a breakdown in the sort of rules-based order of the post-World War II era, except that the rules-based order, one, is imposed by the Americans and largely, and in many cases, ignored most strongly by the Americans, right? The U.S. kind of does what it wants. Now, it still operates within a kind of framework and a sort of veneer of, a coalition of the willing, if you will, right? So when they, move into Afghanistan, they have a coalition of the willing. They don't just do whatever they want. They at least provide some kind of cover of consent or some pretense of cooperation with other nations, right? That they're not acting unilaterally. Although they often do act unilaterally. I mean, you can see the case in, with the Iraq War. Well, that wasn't totally unilateral, but, helping the Israelis. So you see it with the U.S., its involvement with Israel, attacking Iran. The U.S. tends to act unilaterally and has often been the one most eager to break the rules-based system. So in that sense, has it really collapsed? Was it ever really enforced? Well, kind of. People still kind of follow the rule. There's this thing called international law, and how much that even matters, who knows? But you have countries already like Russia and China that have are already not following the rules, right? Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a clear violation of the rules-based order. China taking of Tibet was a violation of the rules. What they're doing in the South China Sea to the Philippines, taking islands from the Philippines, taking islands from Vietnam, genocides, and of course the issue around Taiwan, right? I mean, they're already not following the rules, so I don't think that the U.S. breaking the rules this time is going to make them not follow the rules. You know, they were already not following the rules, so I don't think it's going to affect what they were doing one way or the other, except to say that it does show a greater willingness by the United States now to ignore the rules. And that might give them some pause uh, before they do whatever they're planning to do, and who knows what they're planning to do, frankly. Um, but I mean, it's pretty remarkable what the U.S. did, in terms of just military capability. Um, Russia, Putin's been trying to kill Zelensky for the better part of 4 years, and the U.S. took out Maduro in hours, right? Just went right in, blitzed right through Russian and Chinese arms and radars and missiles or whatever was there, like it would, just carved right through it like butter, and went and got their president. And that does send a message where the Chinese, the CCP rather, and the Russians with Putin are well aware that their capabilities are not on par with America's, right? I mean, all things being equal, that is a crazy thing to happen just overnight. And plus, they knew we were coming, and we still just blitzed right through them and got the president and got him out. And you wonder why they didn't just lob a missile in there to kill him, right? They actually wanted to extract him and take him as a prisoner, which is an interesting approach. And there's the reason, it's kind of funny. So there's this weird tendency, I don't know where it comes from. It's sort of like a ruling class club, right? You don't attack, there's a reason why don't we just shoot down Putin's plane whenever he goes to meet somewhere? Boom, war over, right? Apparently you can't do that. I don't know why exactly you can't do that, why we couldn't just capture Xi Jinping when he was in California a couple years ago, meeting, I don't know. It's considered a faux pas amongst our ruling classes. So Putin can launch a war and kill millions, if not, well, at least hundreds of thousands, right? But shooting down Putin's plane is a step too far. That's you don't do that, I guess, right? I don't have a good answer for you on why that is. It just kind of is. But that's geopolitics happening right now. It does send a message to the Chinese. They're pretty well aware that they're not going to be able to do in Taiwan what the Americans did in Venezuela. It really does kind of showcase just how good the U.S. military is. And it showcases an increased willingness by the Americans to break the international norms now, right? And places like Cuba should definitely worry, right? Nicaragua, people who are flagrantly opposed to the American order. As far, there's been talk that the U.S. might seize Greenland. I don't think so, but who knows, right? Trump is a very erratic president. The issue here, as far as is this a good or a bad thing in terms of American policy, there's a real issue that you don't really want the executive to be able to unilaterally decide that certain state leaders have to be removed, right? That's a lot of power to put to the executive branch, which is primarily the president. So the U.S. president, without oversight from, without checks and balances, oversight from Congress or whoever, can just sort of unilaterally declare, we don't like your leader and we're going to take him out militarily. That's probably not a good thing. There should probably be some oversight. The War Powers Act has made this a real possibility. Bush put it in, Obama doubled down on it, and now Trump is using it, right? And the issue here is that when you remove somebody like Maduro, nobody really cares. Nobody's gonna, well, I would say some people are protesting in the streets in America for whatever reasons, but he's low-hanging fruit, right? It's when you start removing leaders who maybe are not necessarily dictators, right? We just don't like them and we've just decided that they have to go, and then you just get rid of them, right? And the other issue being that Mm, they won't always react well to these things. The world can react badly, right? If it had failed, right? If we were now just bombing Caracas, it would send a much different message, right? The fact that they went in and cleanly got him out in hours, and it didn't turn into a slog, or God forbid something like the Ukraine war. Um, it makes it go all smoother, but it doesn't necessarily go down that way, and it can result in the executive getting you into a real war, right? If the administration decides, willy-nilly to start seizing Chinese tankers, right? Um, China can respond with force, right? It's on the table, so some more caution would be a good thing to have. So that is a very legitimate concern about what the president can or cannot do. Now, you hope that there was a lot of deliberation, and President Trump had a bunch of advisors who said this is something we can do and it's something we should do. And like I said, geopolitically, unfortunately, um, the people of Venezuela be damned, but it is good for America. What will happen in Venezuela? It's going to be, say, a fluid situation for Venezuelans for the foreseeable future. Uh, but anyhow, those are my thoughts on the recent toppling of the Venezuelan regime. Maduro will not be missed, but let's see what happens, right? Moving on, it's going to piss off. It does sort of illustrate that if you're friends with China and Russia, they're not going to protect you, right? That is no defense at all. You are still fair game for the Americans, and nobody's coming to help you.